What's the best brisket spritz to get brisket that tastes and looks like this? Ask two pitmasters and it's bound to start a fight. The apple cider vinegar crowd loves it for the acidity, but the Worcestershire sauce people love it for the umami flavor and because it darkens up the bark. But who is right? Umami. And people get really emotional about this one because we had it as kids all the time. We're testing all three spritzes here on the Smoke Lab so you can make the best brisket at home, so let's get smoking. Starting with the hardware, we've got two briskets, same trim, and also the same rub. I'm using Smoke Trail's BBQ brisket rub. Clear off my Oklahoma Joe's Longhorn offset smoker with the old clearing stick. There we go. Now the briskets go on the smoker, but wait a minute, we've got three spritzes to test and only two briskets. How are we gonna do this scientifically? Easy, we'll split each brisket into two zones for 4 zones total. Brisket number 1 flat zone will be the ACV spritz or apple cider vinegar spritz, and the point zone will be Worcestershire sauce. Brisket number 2 flat zone will be the control with no spritz, and the point zone will be the mystery spritz. Okay, let me tell you guys what the mystery spritz is. It's gelatin. Gelatin, guys. Basically Jello, but without all the sugar and added food coloring. It comes in little packies, all dehydrated, so I mixed it in cold water, then brought it to a boil, and I'm using it right away while it's still liquid. If you leave it longer than, I'd say around 12 hours at room temperature, it might solidify, so you have to use it pretty much right away. The theory here is that gelatin is a protein. In fact, it's found in briskets in the form of collagen, and when we cook briskets for a very long time, the collagen renders down and converts into gelatin. So because it's a protein, maybe it'll enhance the Maillard reaction and browning. Maybe it'll darken up the brisket, maybe it'll crisp up the bark, or maybe it'll form a protective layer that keeps the brisket juicier. Or maybe it does nothing at all. Lighting up the firebox with some charcoal and bigger wood splits to get things started, we're gonna roll at 250 Fahrenheit for the first 6 hours or so. Time to start spritzing, but how am I going to prevent overspray, you might ask? With this patented spray guard. Once installed, I spritz the apple cider vinegar on brisket number 1, then adjust it and spritz the Worcestershire sauce on the point zone. Now I spritz the gelatin spritz on brisket number 2 on the point zone and leave the flat zone with no spritz for comparison purposes. I'm doing that every 30 minutes, and with that much spritzing, you might think, that's probably helping the brisket stay moist. Well, not as much as you might think. If I open up the smoker lid just 10 minutes after spritzing, you can see apart from one weird divot where it's pooling, the moisture is almost all evaporated and the bark is pretty dry. That's because offsets have a ton of airflow that wicks moisture away. When water evaporates from the brisket, it steals heat. That's called evaporative cooling. Now, theoretically, you could use evaporative cooling to your advantage by just strategically spritzing the dry edges of the brisket so they cool down and cook more evenly with the middle of the brisket. That's what Aaron Franklin recommends, but personally in my experience, I find that it just evaporates off so quickly that it doesn't really make a difference, and opening up the lid so frequently to spritz actually slows down my cooks by a lot. Maybe I could rig up some sort of auto spritzer inside the smoker to automatically spritz the brisket without opening the lid. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to see that experiment. So you're probably asking, well, what does spritzing do then? Well, 1, smoke is attracted to wet and cold meat, so spritzing the meat helps the smoke particles stick to it, darkens up your bark, gives you more smoky flavor, and most importantly, when the water from your spritz evaporates off, it's leaving behind all those flavor molecules, whether it's acetic acid from apple cider vinegar or the flavorful concoction of molecules in Worcestershire sauce. Fast forwarding 6 hours later, the briskets are in the stall now and sweating out quite a bit of moisture. Unlike spritzing, this makes a huge difference because the briskets are basically auto-basting themselves constantly. So now we can safely bump our temps up to 300 degrees because why? I'll give you guys a few seconds. I hinted at it before. That's right, it's because water really likes to suck up heat. The phase change from water to vapor, which is what happens when water boils or evaporates, takes a lot of energy. So as the brisket sweats out moisture, it's constantly sucking up energy in order to make that phase change into steam, and that in turn is keeping the brisket from drying out. This sweaty auto-basting during the stall is what people think spritzing actually does, but this is the real version. 8 hours later, the briskets are around 170 degrees internal and have lost much of that protective water weight, so I'm foil boating them to catch the remaining juices, keep the bottom nice and juicy, while the fat cap continues to render texture up like bacon. It also speeds up the cook a lot because it's basically braising in its own juices, which is the main reason that I do it. 10 to 12 hours in, depending on weight, the briskets will be around 90% done. I can tell these ones are done because the fat cap is rendered and they're squishy and they're probing around 190 to 195 internal. So they're almost done. They're just undercooked a little bit. But that is on purpose because now I'm going to wrap them tightly in foil with some ghee or tallow under each one, and immediately I hold them at 150 for around 18 hours until the next day. And by slightly undercooking them and then long holding them at a low temperature overnight, I'm slowly tenderizing those briskets and finishing them to the perfect tenderness. We're gonna start with the control side of the flat because that's what scientists do. So let's cut this baby in half. It's cutting really nicely. Tell this is gonna be a good brisket. Let's check it out. Oh, guys, this is my favorite part. Whew! Look at that. Juicy? Is it tasty though? So looking at the control portion of the flat first, this was not sprayed with anything. We've got some good fat cap rendering. I can poke my finger right through the fat cap there. And we got some nice caramelized looking bark under there. I'm not gonna dig it all up and ruin the slices, but you can see that it's nice and rendered. See the fat cap here? So nice rendering, good looking brisket flat. Let's give her a few slices. Let's take a look at the bark here. Got some nice rendering. Pulls apart nice and easily. Whoops. Slippery brisket. Just tastes like really good bark, really well-rounded brisket. I've got really nothing in particular to say about that. So that's our control. That's what we're gonna compare the rest of the slices to. She's a smoky one. Now this is the gelatin sprayed half. I'm gonna set this aside for now. And we're gonna move on to the apple cider vinegar and Worcestershire sauce spritzed brisket. Let's cut this guy down the middle. Again, another good looking brisket. So this is the side of the flat that was spritzed with apple cider vinegar. Nice looking slice, pulls apart easily. Let's taste the bark. Yeah. You can taste the tang right away of the vinegar. It's actually nice. It complements the brisket because it adds a little bit of acidity to it, cuts through the fat, cuts through the richness of the beef. Now let's try some of the Worcestershire sauce spritzed brisket. This is the brisket point that I spritzed with Worcestershire sauce, or wash your sister sauce. Okay, nice looking point slice, really floppy. Looks delicious. Bark is pretty well rendered. Smells really good. I'm just gonna take a little piece of it here and taste the top of the bark because that's all you're really tasting. Whew, that has so much more flavor than the last two slices that I tried. Wow. If you're going for flavor, Worcestershire sauce spritz is where it's at. That added a ton of flavor. I could definitely notice it. And finally, the gelatin spritzed half of the brisket. Let's give this a few slices. The bark seems a little bit better rendered, a little bit crispier for some reason. I'm not sure why. Give you guys a close-up of the bark. You can tell when you compare it to the last one that I sliced, the fat cap is a lot better rendered. Let's cut some of this off. Wow, the bark tastes amazing. I don't know if that's just because this brisket was positioned differently in the smoker. It got more heat. It had a thicker fat cap that rendered down better. The bark is definitely better rendered and it definitely tastes better. Okay, this is when I notice something in an experiment, I have to double check it. So I'm gonna go back and forth to the other one. Okay, this is the Worcestershire sauce spritzed brisket. Very flavorful, love that taste. It's good, it just hits all the taste buds on the tongue. Now the gelatin spritzed, it just tastes crispier. So here is the Worcestershire sauce point. It's got some good rendering, but if you look at the other point, it's rendered all the way down. A ton more rendering. Now, maybe that's because the gelatin spritz point was a little bit thinner in the fat cap and this fat cap was thicker. I don't really know, but what I can say from this experiment is the gelatin spritz brisket has crispier bark. So conclusions, 2 questions in this video really. The first one is, does spritzing really do anything? Do you need to spritz? And the second question is, if it does do something, what kind of spritz should you use? Personally, and I've found this in previous experiments, I don't find that spritzing adds any juiciness or moisture to your brisket. It's not gonna prevent it from drying out. When you spritz a brisket, there's so much convective airflow in an offset smoker that it just whisks it away really quickly. It's not actually adding much moisture to the bark, but it 100% does add flavor, and depending on what you spritz with, it could help to darken up the bark faster or crisp it up faster. In this experiment, I found that apple cider vinegar adds a nice acidic tang to a brisket that I find cuts through the richness and the fattiness of the beef and adds a lot of flavor. So if you have nothing else, then apple cider vinegar is a good way to go. Worcestershire sauce added a ton of flavor in this video, and I might be spritzing with that in the future because it's just an umami bomb. And finally, spritzing with gelatin, kind of an unusual thing to use, and I probably won't use it in the future. It didn't really seem to have any impact on flavor, but it might have crisped up the bark and rendered the fat cap a little bit more, but it's tough to tell. It could have just been that one of the briskets had a thicker fat cap than the other one, and the thinner one that I spritzed the gelatin with was just thinner, so it rendered faster. Thanks so much, guys, and until next time, happy smoking.